Welcome to the Recovering Fundamentalist podcast. As you can tell, we are not JC, Nathan, and Brian. We are Shanna, Dinsmore, and Kristen Hargis from the Grow in Grace podcast, and we are taking over the RFP this week. Kristen, how are you?
Hostile takeover. We have finally succeeded in what we set out to do and take over the RFP. It is now ours.
That's right.
No, that's just kidding.
That's what women in churches everywhere are doing, right?
Oh no.
Shots fired.
Oh no. No, we're super excited to be able to give the guys their sabbatical or their time off, some well-deserved time off. I know they work really hard in producing the podcast. And so it's really good to see them take some time off and to be able to take some time for themselves and their families. So we're really excited to be able to step in and help out where we can, being the newest podcast to the network. We've enjoyed our time so far, and so we're really excited for the rest of the RFP fam to get to know us a little bit and maybe our personalities. Yeah. And if you guys like what you hear, you can always find us at Grow in Grace podcast. So yeah, we're privileged to do this.
Yeah, we are really excited. And you know what I'm really excited about? This all kind of came about from the RFP meetup in Bourbon.
It really did.
Year.
It really did.
But you and I took a little girls trip to a creepy cabin in the woods. Every time, I will never not talk about it.
I'm not going to live this down. It's fine.
It was die, but
perfectly fine.
We could have, and no one would have known. But it was really sweet to get to meet everyone and worship with everyone. And I got to share my story. And I think just the Lord just kind of used a lot of that to bring about what Grow in Grace is now. And I'm so thankful. And I'm really excited to get to do this all over again. So yeah, November 4th and 5th. Where are we going, Kristen?
We are in Danville, Virginia at Hope Church.
Yep.
And it's going to be a really great time. There is such a good lineup of speakers and music, and the current president of the college where we met and went to school at, Mark Milioni, is one of the speakers, and that'll be fun to be able to connect with him again. That's where we connected, was in Bourbon. We spent a good long time talking to him and his life, and it's going to be a really fun time. I think it's going to be a really beneficial time.
Yeah.
Not only being able to hear the word preached, being able to worship with others, but also just being able to connect with each other. The RFP fam is from all over the country. And so having the opportunity to be able to connect with people that you might just connect on the Facebook page, or you might just see their names pop up every once in a while somewhere, having the opportunity to really be able to connect with them and talk and share stories and laugh and cry and pray together is going to be amazing.
Yeah, I really love the name of it, For the Sake of the Gospel, because that's what this is all about, right? Everything
Absolutely.
That the RFP has set out to do, the network, everything, the heart of it is that it's gospel centered and that we point people back to Christ. And so it's so sweet to, a lot of us have similar upbringings and we can relate with struggles and things, but the goal of it is to all bring it back to the gospel, to Christ. And I am so pumped. And I have been to a lot of conferences before and none of them were $50. So
they worked really hard to keep it very affordable so that people would be able to come, because they know that the trip is going to be, you're going to have to either drive or fly or whatever that might be. So trying to reduce the cost for the conference itself is amazing.
Yeah.
$50
a person to register. And we're going to have the RFP Network will be there, and we're going to have a roundtable discussion and some recordings. And, I think as a woman, I'm really excited about that, because I think one of my most favorite things is when brothers and sisters sit and do theology together. And when women are, not just told to sit in the audience. Like, we're invited into these discussions, and our opinions are valued. And I'm so pumped for this. So registration opens August 1st. So right around the corner, very, very soon. And it is going to be a fantastic couple of days. So I'm super pumped for that.
Hopefully you'll be able to get to see your fall foliage and all of that in Virginia, the things that you don't get in Texas, where it's 105 degrees.
Currently today, 105. And in November, it'll still be really hot. So I'm hoping for beautiful weather.
It's a beautiful 72 right now here in Ohio. So
I cannot with you. And the guys, they also have one other exciting event coming up.
Yeah.
And no one can see my face.
I was like, if they could see our face, we went from like super pumped for the gospel conference, and then we're very pumped for all the pastors that get to go on this trip, but we're also a little salty that we don't get to go because we don't believe in women pastors, whatever. Okay. But enough of our complaining about the fact that we are not invited to this.
Super excited for them to get to do this.
Yes.
So you have they have the Israel trip coming up January 27th through February 4th. Pastors only. It is an incredible deal. $2,800.
Such a good deal.
$2,800. I cannot even fathom. I mean, this is like the major bucket list item for me. Like, one day,
right,
I want to do this. And just to think that they're going to get to sail on the Sea of Galilee and see where Jesus like performed miracles and taught the Sermon on the Mount and arrested and crucified and wrote, like, I'm so jealous. I told them I was kidnapping their wives and we were going to take a trip somewhere. And I'm serious about that. We're going to do that.
Are we going to create our own Israel trip in 2023, 2024, whenever we can?
I think so.
Are we going to try to put one together for just women?
Women only?
Women only.
We want to see these places too.
No, but as far as I know, the Israel trip, they do still have some spots open. And so even though it does say that the time has passed to be able to register, I believe that they still can register if there are any pastors that would like to go.
Yeah, you can go to recoveringfundamentalist.org and all the information is there for you to sign up. So I am really excited. I'm really excited.
I am too.
To hear a lot of the beautiful things that they're going to get to see and witness. And
it's just also fun to give them a hard time for not including everyone, but it's fine. It's fine. We're not bitter. We're not salty at all about it.
It's fine. Well, Kristen, I'm really excited about today's episode because we are going to be talking about something that's really close to my heart. Not even just growing up in fundamentalism, but just the church in general. We just don't do a good job of talking about lament, talking about suffering, how we can bring those things to God and be honest with our feelings. And a friend of mine wrote a book called Embrace Your Life, How to Find Joy When the Life You Have is Not the Life You Hoped For. And she does a beautiful job of laying out lament, the practice of lament. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, because it's not just a women's issue. It's a church issue.
Yeah, even though it is 3 women that are discussing this book and the idea of lament and how it's a practice that we should be doing, it is not solely obviously just for women. Like you said, it's a spiritual discipline that the church is called to do. And no matter whether you're male or female, single, married, have family, pastor, whatever station of life you are in and season of life that you're in, there are either have been or will be times where you will have to practice lament, or where you should practice lament, I guess I should say. And just walking through this with Elizabeth as we were interviewing her and talking and discussing this, it was super helpful for me. Just the frame of mind that you go into lament in, and how it doesn't necessarily always change things, and a lot of times it doesn't necessarily change the circumstances, but it definitely does change you and kind of where you land and where you end up in hope. And so we are really excited to be able to share this interview and have other people be able to hear just the discussion that we got to have.
Yeah. Elizabeth is a very gifted writer and speaker, and I've learned so much from her. She is just like a deep well of wisdom. So we hope that everyone enjoys today's episode with Elizabeth Woodson. So we are so excited today to have a sweet friend of mine on the podcast. Elizabeth Woodson is a Bible teacher who is passionate about equipping believers to understand the rich theological truths of Scripture. She's also the author of one of my favorite books, Embrace Your Life: How to Find Joy When the Life You Have is Not the Life You Hoped For. Elizabeth, thank you for coming today.
I am so excited to be here. So excited to jump into this conversation with y'all.
We are going to talk about one of my favorite things today, which I feel like coming up in my background, it is something that we don't ever talk about. But I think just overall, church-wide, we don't really talk about it a lot. And that is the practice of lament. My personal story, and some of our listeners have already heard this, I'm going to share it again. My husband and I got pregnant with twins about a year into our marriage, and I was told that I'm going to not be able to have kids. So we were just like super excited. And I remember I ended up miscarrying both of them. And it was a very, very, very dark time for me. And I remember really struggling with seeing the goodness of God in that. I knew it. I knew the text. I knew it was true. But in the middle of suffering and hardship and all the emotional pain that it was together, I was really fighting to believe what I knew was true in those moments. And I remember talking to someone in the midst of all of this and just telling them, like, there are times when I'm just on the ground in my bedroom yelling and saying, why? And I will never, like, this marked my life. I was told, you need to be really careful with how you do that. And you don't want to talk to the God of the universe that way. And I remember saying, if that's the case, that's not a God that I want. It was a very crisis of the faith for me in that time. And learning the practice of lament, and it was really life-changing for me. In the last few years, my husband has lost a parent, 4 grandparents, and I've lost 2 grandparents. And 5 of those were unbelievers, and really struggling with that practice of lament and taking these big things to God. That I could do that was such a comfort for my soul. So I'm really passionate about this, and I really want people to be able to know that, he knows you and he sees you, and you can talk to him. And I think you communicate that so beautifully in your book. And so I'm really thankful that you're here and that you can kind of walk us through what that looks like and why we need it. So Elizabeth, when we talk about lament, can you just kind of unpack, like, what do we mean when we say lament?
Lament, I like to call it the prayer for the people in the in-between place, that it shouldn't be any surprise to anybody that hard things happen in our lives, bad things happen. I would even say evil things happen. The Bible calls evil, evil. And so that we would do the same. And so the question is, what do you do with that? We are a people that God has given emotions to, that we are not numb to the things that happen. We might try to numb ourselves through the profound amount of coping mechanisms that are available to us. But we all have this nagging sensation, if anything, that something's really wrong and I don't know what to do with it. And so what I love about Scripture is that it's a model for us, right? It's that we see the people of God, in particular Israel through the Old Testament, as they live as a people of God. And we see them go through some really painful situations, like just really painful. And the habit we see them practice over and over again are these prayers of lament, and really these prayers of sadness and grief and anger and frustration. But the words they speak to God, within itself, that if it's included in our Bible, then it's useful for us. And what we see is, well, these people are saying some really honest things to God. David, at times it can feel like he's yelling at the top of his lungs, Lord, you forgot me. You're not here. You're not keeping your promises.
Yeah.
And I think all of us know what that feels like, to believe, God, if you're good, why do bad things happen to good people? Why did you allow this in my life? I don't want this. Where are you? So on and so on and so on. And what lament does is it gives us a place or something to do with the pain, right? Because the pain does not disappear. Again, we can either take it to God, or we'll try to do a myriad of coping mechanisms. My favorite is Bluebell ice cream, Rocky Road. Something happens in my life, and I just find myself in the Target aisle at the back of the store with the pineapple Bluebell ice cream in my hand. I don't know how it happens, but it happens.
It just appears, right?
Here
it just
we are.
appears.
It's like, oh my gosh. And so I think I'm not even going to bother you with that Instagram reference, but I just somehow find myself in the ice cream aisle, and my coping mechanism of choice is comfort. Like, I just want to comfort myself. I want to give myself a really warm hug. And there's nothing wrong with desiring comfort, right? It's when it becomes the choice over God. And that's when we step into a place of, okay, I'm making a decision that I don't need to. And it's also, I want to say there's a lot of grace for whoever's listening, because this isn't meant for us to beat ourselves down. I think when we recognize, okay, maybe I'm doing a little too much of something, I'm shopping too much, I'm ignoring things, I get easily angered, I'm yelling at my kids or my family, or I'm just in a corner and just numbed out. That's letting you know God has something better for you. And so, Lord, help me find the better. And I believe the better starts at the place of lament, of acknowledging I have pain and doing that acknowledgement with the Lord.
Yeah, I really love that. I think one of the things that I really resonate with is in Psalms, I think it's like Psalms 13, where he's like, how long, oh Lord, will you forget me forever? And I think that's a reality. If you are a follower of Jesus and you're walking through suffering, and you're going to ask yourself that question, like when hardship comes, there's days when you wake up and you're like, God, have you forgotten me? Have you hidden your face from me? And I think lament is that language that kind of puts it behind, like you said, like your feelings of, hey, emotions are a gift. Like I have them and I'm real. And I feel like you don't see me. Like, where are you? And I think that's so encouraging. And what a gift that's in the word for us to say, like, we're not alone, you know? I think of Jesus himself lamenting on the cross in the garden. And he talked to God about his pain, and what a great example that, like, the man of sorrows related to us as we are, makes me cheer up, want to talk about it.
And why would we not? And why, if Jesus did it, why would we not be expected to do it? And it's such a, like you said, I think it's such a foreign thing for us. And I was sitting here trying to think, I'm like, well, why is it such a foreign thing for us? Like, why do we so much not want to lament, or we do turn to those comforts? Why is that? Like, why, how have we come so far from that, from where like the children of Israel did practice that, and that's not something we practice?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things that are connected to that. We are the product of the culture we live in. And so the way in which we worship God and we view God is also related to us being Western and American. There's all these big words you can talk about the time of philosophy we're in, and we don't need to get into that place, but we believe what we believe about God for a reason. And I think our culture doesn't do well with pain, right? I think our Jewish brothers and sisters have just better habits of engaging the holistic nature of who we are as people. And so, pain makes us uncomfortable. Lament makes us uncomfortable. You think about the worship songs we sing in church, and rarely do we sit in songs that are sad for a long time. Like, we might have like the verse that's sad, but then we're going to get to the bridge and the anthem, and we're like, yay,
Exactly.
But there actually are a significant amount of prayers of lament in the book of Psalms. And so I think part of it is we in our culture just are really uncomfortable with being in pain for extended periods of time. Like, we want to get out of it. We want to get away from it. And lament makes you sit in it and face it. And really, honestly, that's, I think, the struggle that a lot of people have, is just being honest and facing it and sitting in it a little bit and not wanting to escape it, and not sitting as in we're just stirring in it, but just, Lord, I'm going to be present with you. And that's not easy. And I think that takes a practice and a shaping by our church culture. I think also people are fearful that it's not going to do anything. Right. Okay. I say this prayer, man, woo, woo, woo. And then my life's the same.
Now what?
Yeah. Now what? Exactly. And lament is not a magic wand, right? It's not that, oh, I pray this prayer and immediately my problems are going to go away. But I believe it's this dynamic place of spiritual transformation, right? As believers, we believe that we don't walk the journey of faith alone, that the Holy Spirit is present in that with us. And I believe, like other spiritual disciplines that we are called to practice, it is transformative. It reminds us of truth. It reminds us of God's character. It is a place of hope, because we're not praying to ourselves, or praying to the God of the universe who changes things. Now that change might not come in the time we want it to, but he does and is doing a work. And so we're just fearful that I'm going to do this, I'm going to sit here and nothing's going to happen. And really it is. And a huge reason why we as believers need to know our Bibles is to remember the promises of God, the promises he's made and the promises that he hasn't made. Because sometimes we can listen to people and believe God has said things and he hasn't said those things. He has not said we will not struggle. What he has said is he will be with us in the struggle. And so we have discomfort, we have fear, but we also have anger. Sometimes you're just really angry, and we might believe that it is dishonoring if I talk to God with the really big emotions I have. Yes. But here's the thing. God already knows what you're thinking. And so you're not hiding from him. And it is, again, in the way that we are made, in our physiology, your emotions, they're not going to go anywhere. And we see a model in scripture of God's people sharing the big emotions. Psalm 13, we talked about it before, of David, and he says some really strong things, but that's not where he ends. And so that's the thing about lament, is it's not that we start with our anger and frustration, but we end with hope in God. But you can't get to the hope if you're not honest about the anger. Anger is not bad. Anger done in sin is what scripture talks about. And that sin leads us away from a place we are seeking to honor God. And lament helps us say, God, I got this stuff and I need you to help me with it, but I'm going to tell you what it is. In the midst of that, I'm going to remind myself that you're good and you're gracious and you're kind and you're faithful and that you can and will do something. Lord, help me. And so it is that we trust that even though it's uncomfortable, it's a good place. Even though we might be fearful, God is bigger than our fears. And even though we might be angry, God can handle our anger because he is in control of all things. And I think if we can get past those issues, we can be in a place where we are comfortable with engaging in lament.
I love that. One of the things you said in your book that I highlighted and like marked little asterisks beside was you said a whole chapter is that God is not afraid of your anger, nor will you dishonor him by bringing it to him. And back to my story at the beginning, that's exactly how I felt. And one thing I would like for you maybe to touch on a little bit before we get into like, what does lament look like? The practice of it. I think something that we have as current believers, like in the church today, is that we have this idea, not only can we not bring the hard things to God, but we're just complaining. That's all we're doing, is we're just going to him and complaining. And so I think it's important to kind of tease out when our complaints are good and when it is, you said something that's like from a sinful place. Could you maybe tease that out a little bit of like, what's the difference?
Yeah, I think one, I believe it's the amount of times that you're talking about something, right? And so there's this initial time, or maybe the first few times where you are really trying to process through something, you're trying to express it. You might say it verbally, you might journal it out. And so you're just really honest about this is hard and this is difficult. The good thing about the Holy Spirit is that he's present with us in the process. And so asking the Holy Spirit to reveal, where are my expectations about life just unreasonable? I might have expected this thing to happen or expected this person to marry me. I think about myself as a single, never married, and growing up in church was given the expectation that if I check all these boxes, I pray all these prayers, I serve great, then my husband's going to come. And it's not true.
and come when you were like 22 or 23, right?
Exactly.
Like come at a young age where then
come at a young age.
live the rest of your life, have the babies and have all the family and great. And yep.
Yep.
And then when you find yourself not there, it throws you for a tailspin, right?
It throws you for a tailspin. And that produces frustration and anger.
Mm-hmm.
And in the process, if we allow God to be honest with us, Psalm 139, search my heart, oh God, you know, and lead me in the way everlasting. You find something funky, lead me in the right way. Is that, God, you actually never promised me marriage. You promised me a good life. You promised me joy and an abundant life, but you never promised me a husband. And so, Lord, adjust my expectations, but there's still pain. And so that I deal with the pain. But complaining is when, Lord, I deserve this. You haven't given me this. Lord, you know, our prayers keep showing up with the same thing, or it's somebody else's fault, right? That we spend our time just blaming other people. And really, we're not seeking to move forward. And that's I think it's a tender space, and it's a tender kind of line between showing up with the fullness of our emotions and this place in which we fall over into complaining, but that our motivation and heart posture is, I want to get to a place where I can honor and glorify God no matter what, that my hands are open, that what I'm coming to him with, he may not say he's going to change. That to me is a place of appropriate lament. Complaining is, give me what I want. You should give me what I want. And I imagine I giving me what I want. And that I believe shows up over time in what we're talking about, that the Lord is sovereign, and that we would want his way over our way, even when that's really, really hard.
I was going to say, that can be a really hard place to get to, right? To go and say, okay, God, like, I'm going to come to you with this with open hands and say, this is hard. Like, I don't want to walk this road. This is not the road I would have chosen for myself. But as we talked about last, episode, God's goodness, in your goodness, you have deemed that this is the road that I am walking. So I have to trust that this is what's best for me right now. But that's a hard thing to get to, and say, okay, God, like, here it is. And not because we think so transactionally, like, if I come to you and do this, product of the way we were raised a lot of times, if I come to you with this, I've done that, I've checked this box off, I've lamented, now change it.
Exactly.
And so it's a hard thing to be able to get to.
Yeah. And I also think, just, with me, the way I grew up in fundamentalism, a lot of times when things like this would happen, you would think it's like a result of sin or something so that's just your whole view of God, like this suffering that I'm experiencing, or this grief that I feel, or the longing, the unmet expectations that I feel, isn't always a result of sin in your life. It's a broken world that we live in, right? And the good news is that one day he's going to make all things new, right?
Exactly.
And that's so encouraging. I think one thing I do want to talk about before we get into hope, because we're going to sit in this lament for a second. I think in general, I said this earlier, I don't think the church has a very good, like, I don't want to say that, has a well-developed, let's use proper English, Shanna, theology of suffering. And I think a lot of times the church can be a very lonely place for those who are hurting. I think how many times I've been really struggling, and I've had like the dark night of the soul. And I walk into church and it's like, how are you? And I'm like, I'm great. How are you? And, inside I'm like, I am really broken right now. Could you maybe speak to that? And I think just be like, we can be real with God, but being real with others, the need for community, where it's a place where it's okay to not be okay. And that you're met there, not only by the Holy Spirit, but you're met there by people. I think we try to, especially as women, we try to walk this alone, and I'm just going to bottle it up. And maybe just the importance of community coming alongside us.
You and God's good design, we don't function well by ourselves. And I know that there are some women who might be listening who have extenuating circumstances where community is just really hard for you. And that's real, because community is also difficult to find, and people that are trustworthy and that you can share your life with. But if there's someone who is good and faithful and wise, that you would allow them to help carry your burdens, because it's too much. And you just need a place where you don't have to be strong for anybody. You don't need to be strong. You can just be. And whether it is a ministry of presence, because all the time we don't need a list of Bible verses or a list of do these 4 steps and you can fix it. You just need to be able to cry with someone and someone to cry with you. And there is something hugely therapeutic about just weeping together with God's people, or just being silent with God's people, or praying with God's people, because sometimes you need somebody to help carry you a little bit of the road. And that's okay. And that's really a part of our human design. And so I always encourage people to go and find good community. You just need one good person. You'll need 15 people. You need one person who's going to pray for you. And the hard part, again, is using wisdom about, and if I share what's really going on in my life, are they going to look at me differently? Are they going to reject me? Are they going to tell somebody, well, the whole church is going to know about my business, or the whole community, or the school, or my kid's school.
That's
is,
a
or
real
whatever.
thing, friend. Yeah.
It's a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just is that it's this coupling of prayer. Holy Spirit, send me to the right person. Wisdom and how we share and how much we share, and trust is something that's built over time. So there are also people who will kind of demand all your stuff. And it's like, you don't have to tell anybody all your business. That you would trust is built over time. That's what I will say. In the wisdom process of finding community, but that if you have good people who have said, hey, what's going on? And that they're trustworthy, share your stuff, because it will transform your journey through suffering when you don't journey by yourself.
Yeah, that's so good. And you said something that I had never heard of in the church that I grew up in. That was the ministry of presence. We immediately, I remember when I was suffering, and I'm trying to be careful with how I say this, because I want, God's word is true. And we say this all the time. We will shout it in the good times. We can whisper it in the hard times. But sometimes it's not helpful for someone to come over. I know it. Like I said earlier, I know it. I know it in my head. I know it in my heart. I don't feel it in the moment. And sometimes just sitting and meeting them in that space is so incredibly helpful. So I'm really glad that you touched on that, because I didn't even know what that was. And I think sometimes that's the best thing that we can do, is just sit with them.
Sit with them. We show up in good community for other people, right? So we become the person that we would hope someone would be for us. Now, it's not a guarantee, but it helps us know, again, how to communicate to our friends, hey, this is what I need in this season. And so, you've said it before, we can tell people this happened because you did something bad. We can dismiss people's pain. We can, Romans 8:28 is my favorite verse not to use. On the immediate place of people suffering. It is true. It's true. Timing is everything.
It's a process to get there, right?
It's a process to get
that's
there,
not the first thing you come out with.
Not the first thing. No, a good meal. This is what my church has taught me. A good meal and a good hug go a long way. And showing up at somebody's door with some food, and you want to sit with them and listen to them, is a huge, powerful ministry. And I've received it. I've been blessed to give it. And I think that can be a good place we starting with people, to allow them to show us the support they need instead of trying to fix their problems.
Yeah.
And I think something that you said earlier about, there are people in a season where they just don't have community, or they're just, I would love to encourage those people, though, that it is worth pursuing. It is a hard thing. And I know sometimes it just seems like there's no one, but it is totally worth it. Because I think, I know Shanna and I always talk about this, there is nothing like having one that knows you intimately and knows you, can almost predict how you're going to respond to something before you even respond to it. I feel like that's the way her and I are. But just someone that has walked with you in that, and be able to say, this sucks. This is, you're almost kind of in a way validating those emotions in a way of yes, this is hard, not dismissing, not saying oh, well, it's all going to work out.
Trust God, Kristen.
Trust God.
Yeah,
And there are
yeah.
times to be able to remind that, right? Like there are times Shanna has said that and I'm like, I don't want to hear that right now, but it's what I needed to hear. Like it wasn't in a like a flippant way, but in a like, you can trust God and you can trust God with these feelings and you can trust God with this.
Yeah. Or it's, hey, Kristen, like, what do you remember to be true about God in those dark things, and making you repeat that sometimes to yourself. And you've done it to me too. It goes both ways here, sister.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is just like acknowledging that there is pain and suffering.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful. There is something, you said something in your book that the fruit of lament is hope. And I've read before that like lament is the pathway from heartbreak to hope. So it's like that in-between space. Can you talk to us a little bit about how hope is the fruit of lament?
You only pray to God because you believe he can do something. Like you're not praying to someone who is not active, is kind of looking in on your life. It's like, man, that sucks. I hope you work it out. Like that's not what he's doing. We believe because of scripture that God is always at work to redeem the broken things. Again, the timeline and methods of his redemption aren't always clear to us, outside of this work of salvation he does through Jesus Christ. But we believe that God cares and he's at work. And that gives us hope. Because that means, God, you haven't forgotten me, you haven't abandoned me, and you will do something. And so give me eyes for the something. And that little spark of hope carries you a long way. Because again, I think lament, the pain, it clouds our vision, and for good reason, right? It's hard and it's heavy. But I believe that the goodness of the Lord is being deposited into our life every day, in the smallest things and the biggest things. And so lament is also this process in which I believe God transforms our vision to see the ways in which he is blessing. And if he's blessing, then he will continue to bless. And again, it's not always what we would want in the form we want it in, but it is, I serve a God who is present in my life and he's doing things, and he will do something in a situation. I've seen him to be faithful before, and he will be faithful again. He is faithful right now. And that to me is a place of hope. Something is going to happen. And like our Christian faith gives us that, because ultimately our hope is in an eternity in which all of these hard and broken and evil things don't exist. And we live in beauty and communion with our God. And that is an ultimate hope we rest in, but there's also present hope. There's future hope, present hope. But I believe because lament reminds us of the character of God, makes us reflect on the things that he has done, and gives us a place to kind of have this cleansing of sorts, to get it out, that we sit in, okay, this is who my God is. This is what he's going to do. Let me wait with hope on him.
Yeah, I think hope is so important, because you said there is hope that he could change our situations, but he also might not, that he will give us, we have himself, like grace to sustain us, right? And in your book, you talk about longing, and then you go through this beautiful, I'm gonna let you talk about your book in just a second, because I really want everyone to read this, because I want people to know that there is joy. There is joy that is found when your life isn't what you thought it would be. So can you kind of talk about your heart? I love how one of my favorite things about this book is just how vulnerable you are in it. And you're writing from a place of like, I've been through this and I am in this, So can you kind of talk about just kind of your heart behind this book?
Yeah, the book is called Embrace Your Life: How to Find Joy When the Life You Have Is Not the Life You Hope For. And the moment when you are like, this is not what I signed up for. I don't want this. I'll take anything else, and I wanted to write a book for people who were carrying things they've been carrying for a long time. Right. So it's not that, okay, it'll get better next week or it'll get better in a month. It may not get better for a decade. And so what do we give people? And my work in ministry, I worked for 2 different churches in the Dallas area, not at the same time. I'm gonna tell people that. They're like, you work at 2 churches at the same time? I'm like, no. Tell the story differently. I've talked to a lot of people who are and I've loved it, to walk with people through just hard seasons. And I've seen 2 groups of people. And there's a group of people who they're carrying chronic illnesses, difficulties in their marriage, single, married, financial struggles, a whole gamut, or life's just disappointing, right? Sometimes it's not big, sometimes it's just small. Like, I don't have great friends, and I just moved to this place and I don't know anybody, and I wish I knew somebody. And there are people who in the midst of it, they would just choose to thrive. Like, they would just fight to show up and to live. It doesn't mean the seasons were great all the time, but you could see this constant stream of they want to move forward in their life, even though moving forward means they kind of carry this luggage of stuff with them. But then there are the people who got stuck, and it was all they talked about. They couldn't move forward. Like, I saw them miss opportunities, can't engage in new relationships, really not be fruitful at all, because it's just this constant record they play over and over again. And that mirrored with my own life of trying to figure out, again, it's not a book about singleness, but singleness is a really strong illustration of the longing that people have. How do I live vibrantly? Like, not just limp along, but I'm going to be holding on with joy and excitement to life God has given me. And that's why I wrote the book, because I want to help people thrive. And I don't want to give people sugary, sweet answers. I don't want to tell you it's going to change, because it might not. But joy is possible. And the only reason joy is possible is because of Jesus. And so I wanted a book that no matter the season, people could pull it off the shelf and say, okay, I don't want this, but how can I find joy with it?
Yeah. And I think you did a beautiful job, because I am married, and I've read this twice already. Like, it is so beautiful, and it hits me differently than it would hit Kristen as a single woman, And then let me tell you this. And then I read it twice, because I read it like digitally for your launch, and then I got it and I read it and like highlighted the whole book. And then, sister, because I want you to record a Bible, I'm like waiting for you to record like this Bible thing, like for someone, so I can like listen to your voice. So I got it. Also, my husband's like, you did not just also buy that an audiobook. I was like, but it hits different when she reads it.
I appreciate your support. I do. I really do.
It's like number one support.
It hits different. But yeah, I wanted you to be able to just kind of speak into that, because it truly is a very beautiful, vulnerable, encouraging book. I want them, they can go wherever books are sold, right? I've seen it, girlfriend. I've seen it.
Out there.
The bookstore, I'm like, look at her in the wild. That's what I say. I've seen it in the wild. And yeah, if you want to hear more from Elizabeth, because she is just a wealth of knowledge, Elizabeth, truly, I've learned a lot from you, and I'm so grateful for your ministry. But you can find her at elizabethwoodson.org or Instagram. Get her truth. I would encourage people to go to elizabethwoodson.org though and sign up for your emails, because I get them and I'm like, I'm so encouraged by that. So
thank you.
Hey, thanks. Thank you for being on here.
Thank you so much.
I cannot
wait.
Having me. I can't wait to like unpack this spiritual discipline for people, and that it's okay to not be okay. Yeah. I read once that to cry is human, but to lament is Christian. Thank you, friend.